Welcome back to another Star Mini-Gaming YouTube video. As always, I'm James, and we are continuing our series on the narrative of the Age of Sigmar, going through progressively each of the stories one at a time. And this one is one of the two stories that's in the Search for Ghal Maraz book. This one is the Hidden Vale, and this one was honestly one of the toughest to review for myself because the entire book of The Search for Ghal Maraz is my favorite of all the stories I've read so far. I think it's the best written, most interesting stories. But this story in particular has been my favorite out of everything so far. So there was the temptation to go a little too far into the details on it and make this less of a true review and summary and more of just a full recount, almost word for word, and perhaps take even longer than the book itself in describing what all happens. But I have my notes. I'm going to do my best to keep it pretty brief like the others. So let's dive on in. Let's, as always, start with the characters because they're important, right? So we have the Lord Celestant Gardas, who this is the first time in any of the novels that I've read that he's appeared. And out of all the Lord Celestants, this one, he's my favorite. The deeds that he performs in this story are, in my opinion, quite far above and beyond what the other Lord Celestants accomplish in their exploits. And just his character is far more relatable and interesting, in my opinion, than Vandus in the Azure Gates of Azure book, or even Tarsus to a degree in the I guess audio series. I don't really know what the official title would be. At first, I would have thought it was the Realm Gate Wars was that kind of subtitle, but every book has that before it thus far. So, who knows? Then we have the Lord Castellant Grimm, and this is the first time in any of the stories that I've reviewed or read that we get to see the Lord Castellant actually as a character. In all the other stories that I've gone through, it may have mentioned a Lord Castellant here or there, but never really by name, or even if by name, never more than such a tertiary kind of character that they accomplish basically nothing in the book or aren't, probably will never appear again. But Grimm is a very central character in this story. And I like that because, I like kind of how GW has been fleshing out each of the different models and characters that we have represented in the game. Obviously, we have a few different Lord Celestants. We have Vandus, who's mounted on the Dracoth, like in the starter set, and then this one, Tarsus and Gardas, both are described as being armed and armored like the foot model with the hammer and sword. So it's kind of neat to have that. This is, like I said, the first time we've seen the Lord Castellant with his lantern and halberd. I've always thought the halberd was a really cool weapon, so I would like to pick up that model at some point for that. And his little bird dog. Then we have the return of the Glotkin. They're quite prominent in this book. We have 3 or 4 different Maggoth lords. Honestly, can't remember any of their names except the despised one, who, out of all of the forces of Nurgle, is by far the most intelligent. The Glotkin, honestly, they seem kind of stupid. Like they're kind of bumbling along, just playing at war. Some of the other Maggoth lords are kind of incompetent and inept. And then the one Maggoth lord, I honestly can't remember his name. Something Twiceborn. He's by far the most amusing. And I really like the fact that, at least in these novels, that they've been kind of presenting the Nurgle forces as a more comedic group. Like their interactions with each other, their Their monologues, everything has more of a comedic slant to it, which I think is needed because honestly, Nurgle is disgusting, and so if I just had to read a book that contained Nurgle's forces without any kind of lighter bits to it, it wouldn't be enjoyable. I can say that. We also have Bolithrax, who is a greater unclean one of Nurgle, and we have Twiceborn's mount whose name is Triple Tongue. It's not an important character, but that's one that just like has stuck with me, so I just took note of it because I thought it was an amusing name. And this story takes place in the realm of life, which is Alarielle's realm, and we don't really see much in the way of life actually, beyond plants and just like lots of greenery, and then the Sylvaneth and a few other kind of like mild, minor life forms, like some kind of like pixie fairy stuff. I can't remember exactly what they're called, but they fight. There's a group of them that fight some Nurglings at one point, and that's about their entire involvement in the story. Excuse me. But the story opens with the prologue from Gardus' perspective, and he is in the Garden of Nurgle by himself, or at least bereft of any other Stormcast forces, and he's fleeing from Bolithrax. And the prologue I think it's really well written. You get this kind of sense of urgency as he's just running. He's exhausted. He fought Bolithrax. Bolithrax came into the mortal realm, and basically the only way that Gardus could prevent him from kind of tearing into the Stormcast forces was to basically have a gambit where he knocked himself and Bolithrax back into Nurgle's garden, sacrificing himself in the process. So he's just running. He's been running for a very, very, very long time. And finally, he comes across this point of light and realizes that it's his ticket out of there. So he heads into it, and that's the end of the prologue. So for a little while, we don't see him. And then the main part of the book, with chapter 1, moves into the introduction of Grim, the Lord Castellant, who's had to take over leading the Stormcast with Gardus' supposed death. It's kind of neat because we do begin to see the kind of hierarchy of rank, and that like the Lord Relictor doesn't take over. I guess the second in command, at least if there is one, is going to quite often be the Lord Castellant. But the Grim and his forces have been here for quite some time, engaged against the forces of Nurgle and the Skaven, who are also present, and the Beastmen, because as much as like Beastmen might seem like a faction that GW is kind of removing or slowly phasing out of the game, they sure do crop up a lot in these stories still. They kind of still seem to be everyone's favorite punching bag. So GW's got to throw them in, right? They can't be having all the main Chaos forces just getting beat down left, right, and center, because then they're not impressive. So unfortunately for the Beastmen, the chaff role kind of falls to them. But I think this is the first time, at least in the novels that I've reviewed, that we've encountered the Skaven, which is nice. It's nice to actually see them in here. It's nice to see how they're interacting with the rest of Chaos, and to be honest, it makes sense to me that of all the Chaos gods, that they would work the most closely with Nurgle. In the end times, the Skaven were so focused on pestilence and disease and all, which is obviously right up Nurgle's alley. So anyways, they're there. And the kind of interesting thing is that they don't really seem to be there on equal footing. Their Vermin Lord, who is kind of over the detachment of Skaven that is here, kind of seems to be a second class commander. Like he, in his desires, kind of bows to the Glotkin and some of the other Maggoth lords, whenever missions are being assigned. But back to Grimm real quick. They've been fighting, and there's some relic called the Dirge Horn that I'm not familiar with from anything before that that's been playing. So that's basically been inflicting like physical pain and mental pain on all of the Stormcast and the Sylvaneth and everyone else of the realm who's not Chaos aligned. And it's some kind of horn that the Beastmen have that they're playing, and between that and the physical effects of Nurgle's diseases and rot and all that's been on the realm, the Stormcast are just breaking down. They're still fighting, but they're just worn out in every facet. But eventually they do battle their way to where the Dirge Horn is, and they destroy it and kind of remove at least that obstacle from themselves. And the Sylvaneth, like, somehow, I'm not entirely sure, like, clean up this pool area, this like spring, and purify it so it's like completely clean. And the Stormcast stumble on this and drink of the water, and kind of like splash it on themselves and their armor, and it just completely like refreshes and restores them. So basically everything that Chaos has done to wear these guys down has been undone by the forces of life. And so Gardas then reemerges back into the mortal realm and encounters the Sylvaneth fighting a massive Skaven, Beastman, and Nurgle force. And he's tired. He's been running for a really long time, but he's just filled with this fire to strike back against the enemies of Sigmar. And so he basically goes off like a tornado into the middle of these enemy forces and is just annihilating them. And that kind of helps turn the tide for the Sylvaneth's favor. It draws the Skaven's attention just enough that the Tree Lords and the Branch Wraiths and all are able to basically gather their forces and crush the Skaven and Beastmen that are here. And he talks with the Sylvaneth about a vision that he had when he was in Nurgle's garden. And so they kind of ally up to bring him back to his people, because the Sylvaneth are trying to find Alarielle as well, and wake her for war. So Gardas does rejoin his brothers, and at first they can't believe it, right? They're like, no one returns from the Garden of Nurgle. But he proves that he is who he says he is, and that he's not under Nurgle's thumb. And so they continue on. And there's several more little skirmishes along the way. In every Warhammer book, basically, there's like the initial big battle, and then there's skirmish, and then we get to the end where there's a big fight. And so to set up the big fight, the Stormcast finally do find where Alarielle is. She's in the area, which is, as the book is titled, called the Hidden Vale. And much like the Realm of Death that has like an overworld and an underworld to it, it's a similar concept here. It's kind of like a world hidden within the world. Like Chaos had been looking for this, of course, but they couldn't find it. And it was hidden under this like glade. I'm not entirely sure how this works. Like what the book describes it, it's not real clear. But basically, like the Stormcast find like in this, this big like field area with some pools of water and all. Basically, like they somehow see like underneath the water is this hidden veil, and so somehow like through magic they managed to like enter into it. And then the Nurgle forces, who have been like secretly following them, enter as well, which of course we all knew that they would. And so the Stormcast turn to fight them. The Sylvaneth are like outraged. They're like, you brought Nurgle here. And so they begin to attack the Stormcast. Alarielle wakes up and is basically like, no, stop. And gets reorganizes the Sylvaneth. And they and the Stormcast begin to fight. And it's this massive battle on a power scale unlike anything that we've seen before in terms of the Age of Sigmar novels thus far. And Balathrax has finally shown up, and the Glotkin are here, and the Vermin Lord is here, and the Maggoth Lords are here, and there's just, a massive battle with champions on both sides. And Alarielle's basically like, you're all nothing to me. And she kills Balthrax and she annihilates the Vermin Lord and is just tearing through the forces. And she's like summoning up like vines that have like are covered in spikes and roots from trees and all around there, and just using them to like rip through the chaos forces. And it's just a bloodbath. But clearly the forces of order are about to win. And so the Glotkin and the Maggoth lords that are still around decide, you know what, we can't win this fight, so let's just destroy this hidden glade and make it all worthwhile, because we don't want them to be able to not only defeat our forces, but also undo everything that we've done. So they set loose some kind of filth, and it just rolls into the Hidden Vale and basically destroys everything. Gardas kind of questions to himself whether or not it will ever be fixable. And Alarielle is, so distraught by this that if you've seen the second Avengers movie, whenever who was it? Quicksilver dies, and the Scarlet Witch is like guarding basically the key point that the Avengers have been trying to hold. She's just like, she feels it, and she just falls down on her knees and sends out this like shockwave of energy that just destroys all the robots that are attacking. And Alarielle does something very similar. She basically lets out this scream that just like annihilates everything of chaos that's nearby, and like just destroys all their forces. And like even the Stormcast and Sylvaneth are like sent reeling by this like energy wave. So the battle's won, but the Hidden Glade is lost. And so at the end of this, Alarielle and the Sylvaneth are gathered together, and they're talking with the Stormcast as they leave the Hidden Vale. And the Stormcast are trying to like convince Alarielle to come back to Sigmar's realm, the realm of heavens, with them. And Alarielle says like, I have nowhere to go. I have no home anymore. I'm vulnerable now. And it's not really clear 100%, like, does she end up going with them? Does she just kind of leave and like go off somewhere else within her realm? I believe that it says something along the lines of that she's going to stay and fight, but I can't remember 100%. I know that she doesn't go right then to the realm of heavens, at least. But a couple notable points in this story that I thought were amusing was apparently in the realm of life, there are these giant floating islands that some have like mountains and hills on them, and they're alive. They're living creatures. So at one point, before the Stormcast find the Hidden Vale, they basically climb up, and their prosecutors help them get there. And all the Stormcast get on this island, or like basically surfing through the air on this massive mountain island to get to where the Hidden Vale is, because Gardas has had a vision of where they need to go. And so Chaos like uses their weapons and all to basically kill the mountain and bring it down. And let's see, yeah, that was the other like really kind of weird and interesting thing. So we've had our first real look at the realm of life. So I think that's 3 realms thus far that have been covered, at least in the stuff that I've read: fire, death, and life. Well, I guess 4 if you include the realm of heavens. But it's kind of weird to me because there's not really any kind of like animal life described anywhere. Like even in the areas that haven't really been taken over by Nurgle, because unlike the realm of fire in the Gates of Azir, like the realm of fire is just conquered. It at least according to the Gates of Azir book, like all resistance is crushed. Chaos has been here for a while. Chaos controls everything. In the audio drama series that takes place in the realm of death, it seems to be similar, but that Chaos has much less of a stranglehold over it. That there's still pockets of resistance, and that it's just not like firmly underfoot. And that was the first time that we saw any Nurgle forces. At first, we had just seen Khorne, And in this one, there doesn't seem to be any Khorne forces in the realm of life, but there are Nurgle, Skaven, and Beastmen, and this one seems to be kind of, in. It is really weird in terms of like trying to figure out exactly how the war has been going. Like, obviously they've been losing because Alariel has been unconscious or asleep or whatever. I'm not really sure why all these um, former incarnates of magic are asleep in their different realms, but Alariel finally wakes up, in this fighting. So we know that the war has been going against the realm of life, like not for them. They're not making progress. But the Sylvaneth has still been around. They've still been fighting. There's places in the world that are currently unaffected by Nurgle. Pockets of basically cleansed life. But we don't see any kind of like fish life or animal life or anything like that mentioned in the book, which I thought was kind of interesting for the realm of life. It really seems it's like the realm of plant life. So that's just kind of weird to me that you'd call it realm of life but not have all forms of life. And so yeah, next in the next story, I'm not sure what realm it's in. I'm gonna have to double check. But in the next one, we actually have a story with Vandus and Ionis again. That does take place after the Gates of Azir, where they go and they reclaim Ghal Maraz from Tzeentch forces. So this is the first time that we'll get to see Tzeentch in Age of Sigmar. So until next time, this is James, and happy gaming.